let's unpack this a bit more now with Shaina Low. She's a communication advisor at the Norwegian Refugee Council. She joins us now live from occupied East Jerusalem. Shaina, incredible words there from our correspondent Nizar Sadawi, saying that so many people would actually want to stay there in Rafah, even if that ground invasion that Israel is discussing happens. From your point of view as a humanitarian organization, how do you even prepare to move 1.5 million people? Do you have an evacuation plan? And in the last hour, we heard this breaking news, Israel urging UN agencies to help evacuate civilians from Gaza war zone. So I don't even know what exactly that means to you.
Yeah, I mean, logistically, it would be a nightmare to relocate these people, who many of whom have already been displaced multiple times over the last 4 months. As you can see in the imagery that you're showing, many of these people are sleeping in tents. There are no structures or facilities able to accommodate them in the middle area or in northern Gaza. And so to imagine trying to uproot these people who've already been displaced many times, most of whom have very little belongings, it just is unimaginable, and logistically would be a nightmare. On top of that, all of the aid, all of the humanitarian assistance that is entering Gaza is coming in through Rafah, either through the Rafah crossing from Egypt or Kerem Shalom in crossing in Israel. And so to imagine how we as humanitarians would be able to access the aid coming in and then be able to distribute it to other areas in Gaza. Already we're struggling with very few agencies being able to make the journey all the way up to the north and distribute aid to the people in need there. This simply would be a disaster. We need not to be evacuating people, but rather to be continuing to push for a sustained, prolonged ceasefire. This is the only way that this conflict can be solved. It cannot be solved through military means.
And yet the Israeli Prime Minister seems adamant on military means being the way forward. Let's go back to that scenario where 1.5 million people do evacuate, do move. Logistically, you called it a nightmare. How do you help them as they're moving, when even helping them when they're static is so challenging for aid organizations?
On top of that, you have to remember that the staff that we have operating in Gaza are all people facing these same issues. Most of our staff has been displaced into Rafah, and not only them, but also their families. And so to imagine how humanitarian agencies would be expected to provide some type of assistance when our own staff are still in need of assistance, I honestly do not know how this would even be feasible. Let alone how long it would take, particularly when you consider the devastation to Gaza's both buildings and infrastructure and streets.
Absolutely. And just some of those images that we've been seeing of Rafah, what it used to look like before, and now just so densely populated with so many tents. And of course, a tent is a luxury. Just tell us what your biggest concern will be if diplomacy fails right now and Netanyahu and Israel, its war cabinet, go ahead with their planned ground offensive there in Rafah.
I mean, of course, our biggest concern is the toll on civilian life. Already, we have over 28,000 Palestinians who have been killed over the last 4 months in Gaza, and that is likely a great underestimate because of the number of bodies trapped under rubble. And to imagine when you have more than half of Gaza's population in such a densely populated small area of Gaza, you can only imagine the amount of devastation, death, destruction that would unfold were Israel to expand its and intensify its military operations there.
Shaina Low, thank you so much for speaking to us, communications advisor at the Norwegian Refugee Council.